Before we begin, please be advised that this episode contains discussions of sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including abuse, domestic violence, suicidal ideation, and other traumatic experiences. We strongly encourage listener and viewer discretion. If you or someone you know is affected by any of the issues discussed, please seek support from a licensed mental health professional or reach out to a support organization in your area. Your well being matters.
The 3rd of June 2014 was a Tuesday. On the Wednesday, I went to work, and my manager at the time cornered me. And we laugh about it to this day because she's become a very dear friend. And she was someone that I absolutely hated. And she said to me, she knows that something's up with me and she wants to put me in touch with an organization. And if I don't have that conversation, I'm going to get fired. On the Friday, it felt like my guts were on the floor because what they did is they held a mirror to me and I couldn't look away. I had to look into that mirror, metaphorically. And what they said to me was all of the stuff that I inherently knew that I was struggling with. And they literally brought to the front all of the pain that I was hiding for over 20 years. Funny enough, I was on a high because I felt so liberated. And I thought I was invincible, and I made some very stupid decisions. Like, as I said, I went to work on the Monday and I resigned immediately without having another job. And I was a single mother of 2 kids. You know, because I know what it's taken for me to come out of that fire of purification, basically, and haul myself out of that pit of darkness. I will refuse now. And I've become even more forceful in the last few years because I used to struggle with my relationships with men, where I had no boundaries and I still didn't have a sense of self-worth, and that used to bring me down all the time. And then in my last relationship 6.5 years ago, something switched so drastically.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Zen Now. Today's guest is Tavanya Moodley, an author, international speaker, and a fierce advocate for gender-based violence and mental health awareness. But before all the titles, she was a survivor. Her story is one of deep pain, resilience, and transformation. From living through trauma to becoming a voice for the voiceless, Tavanya has turned her words into powerful message and hope of healing. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So Tavanya, take us back to that first feeling, to that first moment when all of this went down. How did that feel?
I think the turning point in my life was obviously the 3rd of June 2014. That was the day that I had a failed suicide attempt. And that definitely was the catalyst for transformation in my life. But if I have to go back and connect to the girl that I was back then, I still resonate very deeply with her sense of powerlessness, of feeling completely invisible, of having compounded trauma that was just too much to get over. And I thought life was done with me. And I was done with life, but obviously God had different plans.
Yeah. I think he was also looking after you, no?
Definitely. I think we don't, hindsight is a beautiful thing, and we can only put the pieces together retrospectively. And that's how it's been with me, because I really thought that the culmination of all of the traumatic life experiences were going to count against me. But actually, it's been the thing that is effectively what changes lives now and helped me to become this version of myself. So it's very interesting how when we feel like we're in the pit of despair, it's actually, it could be the greatest gift if we look at it that way.
Yeah. I made a post the other day about how darkness becomes the advocate for light.
Yeah.
You have to go through that moment to actually get to that new dawn. But we have to embrace the darkness as well. Otherwise, It just consumes us.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely vital what you say, that we have to know the darkness to appreciate the light. And it's many of us that have had these experiences that, we found our light through the darkness and it wasn't the other way around. So that's quite
Yeah.
profound.
I don't think there's a very small percentage of people who actually advocate for or get to that light without going through some form of despair or traumatic
Yeah.
event or something.
Yeah. That is the spiritual process, right? It's not fun.
Yeah.
Every person that you know that successfully overcame something has been or has become something successful, whatever is your measurement of success, has become that way because of something profound happening in their life. But we don't see it that way when we're in the center of the fire, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, your story is deeply personal. How did you get the courage to share it so publicly?
When you've spent 25 years of your life trying to suppress that truth or try to suffocate it, it comes out sideways. And for me, that sideways was depression, acute depression. For a lot of people, your truth comes out through addiction, through violence. And I think when I started my healing journey after my failed suicide attempt, needing to tell my truth was a huge part of my healing process, but it was also cathartic in the sense that I needed to honor my journey because I demonized it for so many years, decades of
Right.
my life. I demonized everything. And when I started my healing process and I went through a real profound and very deeply personal journey of transformation, I realized that telling my truth was the last step in my emancipation. And it was the greatest thing that I ever did because it had a massive ripple effect that went out into the world and took a life of its own and
Yeah.
helped me to become this woman. And it's been really profound in my continuous healing, actually. It freed me.
Yeah. Liberation of the soul, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we become as sick as our secrets. And I say that I've been saying that for the last, 7, 8 years that I've been doing this work, that we become as sick as our secrets. And, truth is a really powerful bridge because it connects us to each other in such deeply profound ways. And that's what I found, going about this healing journey.
Yeah. Did you have any support? Any kind of support to help you through?
Yeah. So how it worked in a very serendipitous way was, I think, the 3rd of June 2014 was a Tuesday. On the Wednesday, I went to work, and my manager at the time cornered me. And we laugh about it to this day because she's become a very dear friend. And she was someone that I absolutely hated. And she said to me, she knows that something's up with me, and she wants to put me in touch with an organization. And if I don't have that conversation, I'm going to get fired. So I
Oh, wow.
was like, swearing, and I said, fine, I'll just have that conversation. And I had a conversation with the co-founder of an ontological transformational company that does a workshop over 3 days that changes your life and deeply transforms your life. And serendipitously, I was put on that workshop the next day. And when I had that conversation with the co-founder, he said to me, please give me 3 days, and if that doesn't do anything for you, you can execute your plan. On the Friday, all in the same week this happened, right? Friday, I went on this workshop, and that was the one thing that literally saved my life and changed my life. Over 3 days, I had the community that I longed for. I found the tribe of people that became my people. And I said to my then manager that it was her one act of not looking away that saved my life. So those strangers became my people, and they became such a pivotal support structure over the years because it was the one place that I was given the freedom to be exactly who I am and given permission to show up as I am without trying to filter it or try
Yeah.
to, conform. And they set me free. They literally breathed life into me again. So that was definitely meeting the support structure that I needed. And, it's been, 10, 11 years already. And, they're still my people. I can still call on them today and say, this is what I need. And, my family didn't always understand. It's very difficult growing up as an Indian girl in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah.
So, we didn't have the language to articulate. And, my family now, we've had really healing conversations, and I've got massive, massive support from my immediate family now that, was really, really great in also healing our relationships.
You spoke about the plan, to execute the plan. Was that to take your own life?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he told you, give me 3 days, and if you're not happy, do it.
So my manager went on the workshop a few years before that, and she knew something was wrong with me. And this is the beauty of actually seeing people, because, I worked in an organization at that stage where I was in charge of 65 people. I had a huge portfolio,
Okay.
and everybody looked at me and thought, I had this mask on of, this professional client services team leader, but she saw something much deeper than what I was trying to hide. And she went and told this guy. And when he asked me, I said, yes, I actually tried to kill myself 2 days before. It didn't work. And so I am going to try. I'm going to execute that plan and make sure that I succeed. And all he said to me was, give me 3 days. And by the Sunday, my life had changed wherever. I actually went back to work on Monday and resigned immediately because I knew that career was not for me. I didn't want to be in law. And the rest is history, I think.
Yeah. Profound moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess at that point in time, like you said, you didn't have the support knowledge, or they didn't have the support voice to actually, the words to actually help you out.
Yeah.
Like in terms of our families. And I get it. I understand where you're coming from. So as a brown male, it's difficult for us as well, still in this day and age, to go and try and explain what that support is actually needed, why we need that support.
But I think it's also the
like I
fact
think,
that it's still a stigma in our community. It's still very much. I'm doing mental health work for many years now, and I find that there's not a deeper understanding in the decade that I've been doing this work, and we still have a very long way to go to try. Even normalizing difficult conversations in our men is something that we are still struggling with, and I think we have a lot of work to do in this space.
Yeah, we have to advocate for more of these conversations.
Yeah.
And bring it up to the surface. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but as anything in life, when you go through something new, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And as you go along in that journey, the tension or the anxiety suppresses. You become less tense in that when you get into that situation. I mean, I myself was that person where I didn't want to get into anything difficult to talk about. But now it's more about, okay, let me accept. Let me listen. Why? Instead of just reacting, because I was very reactionary and very sensitive to certain topics in life. Because criticism is not something that is my strong suit. I would not use it as fuel. I use it as, why are you telling me all of this? It's not right.
Yeah.
But now it's more of like, okay, somebody's seeing it from an objective point of view. They're not trying to be nasty towards you. They're just giving you something that you don't see in yourself. And that's where you need to be mindful enough to take on that information and work through it. And yeah, sometimes it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be very pretty to understand that, you have certain traits that are not good about yourself, but you can work on them and you can improve. You're not going to get there 100%, but you can improve.
Absolutely. I think, that's feedback, and we get feedback all the time from the people closest to us. And, you have to reach that level of self-awareness where you can receive it. Because if somebody tells you that you are an elephant, if someone tells me that, I'm going to take exception because I do have weight issues, but I mean, if they have to tell me something that doesn't land with me, it will go over my head and I won't care about it, right? But if somebody tells me something that triggers me, it's obviously something I need to look at. And I think that is, something, that level of self-awareness, where it's uncomfortable, and a lot of people try to deviate from it. And especially with men, I think, with men, you've been raised a certain way and you've been given a template of what masculinity means. So I think
Mhm.
feedback is very difficult for most men. That level of self awareness, that emotional intelligence, those are things that you cultivate, I think, only when you have a deeply personal growth trajectory that you're on. And if you otherwise, you don't receive it, and the accepted emotion is anger. And
Yeah.
that's what we see with most men these days.
How did you accept what the guy was telling you? Your hard truths. Were you able to sit with it, or did you were like, nah, this is BS?
I'll tell you, it was two men and a group of people that were assisting on that workshop. On the Friday, it felt like my guts were on the floor because what they did is they held a mirror to me and I couldn't look away. I had to look into that mirror metaphorically. And what they said to me was all of the stuff that I inherently knew that I was struggling with. And they literally brought to the front all of the pain that I was hiding for over 20 years. And I couldn't look away. But I think I
Mm.
was also at that stage of such utter despair that maybe I wanted to be seen. Maybe a part of me wanted somebody to say, I see this is going on with you. This is the truth of what's going on with you. And whatever system or methodology they used worked, obviously, because I needed for that truth to come out. And so I mean, I fought really hard. We've had those conversations, years later about how difficult it was for me. Someone called me the walking dead and gave me that
Mm.
feedback, and that was tough to hear. And but all of those things ultimately served me because it became the catalyst for me to start my own healing journey. And all they did was basically give me permission to say, okay, it's time for you to stop messing around and cucking around with your life. And it's
Yeah.
time to get real, tell your truth. Your truth will set you free. And then you start your process of healing. And that's effectively what I've done. It was not fun
Isn't
at
that
all.
isn't that the basis of all of it? The truth
Yeah.
will set you free.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's where
That's,
all of it stems from, right?
yeah. That's, I
I
think,
think regardless of who you are.
yeah. Absolutely, the truth will set you free. I think I have that at the back of my book, actually. I think I
Yeah.
did. But yeah, that is exactly what happened to me because I was running away from the truth for decades. And it caught up with me. It caught up with me in such a bad way that I thought ending my life would be the best thing for everybody, for my children, for my family. I just thought I had absolutely nothing to contribute. And now, when I look back 11 years later, I am shocked at what my life has turned out to be. It's actually surpassed my dreams in ways that I couldn't even fathom. And,
Yeah.
it makes me emotional to even think about, but these are things that I didn't think were available for me. But it's the very things that I thought were counting against me that became the reasons for me to become this woman. And it's amazing how the world works and how the universe works. But that's it. When you feel you're buried, you're actually planted.
Yeah. I mean, given the status of where we are in the world, mental health now is such a hot topic. Not
Yeah,
just mental health. I think I've come across now so many people across my platform as well now, and I am learning about so many people's stories. And before, I would never be able to sit with the energy that everybody is bringing in.
yeah,
I would take on that energy onto myself, and it would become me. I would take on that. But I learned through this journey, uh, it's just people are just sharing what they are going through. They are not your truths.
yeah,
Hence why when you get to a stage where both of us are right now, the it's a deflection now. You accept, you listen, but you don't take on that energy into yourself, because then it contributes to your journey of
yeah,
delaying the healing part.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
difficult.
It is difficult to keep, you know, the boundary up when it comes to taking on other people's stuff. And I'm a natural empath and I'm a codependent.
Mm.
So that's already like a recipe for disaster where I want to, I receive other people's stories and, it can really mess me up. But I've had to learn how to separate their story from my story. And everybody's got a story that's, emanates from their own subjective experiences and from their own, belief system and from their own childhood and stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be my truth. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to me. I don't have to take ownership of it. But these are very hard lessons to learn, and it takes consistent work to separate, especially as you say, the work that you do, the work that I do. I work with gender-based violence victims, often, and adopting their story and adopting their pain and stuff is very hard to not do, especially because I'm a survivor myself. But you
Exactly.
have to keep the separation for your own mental health, actually.
Yeah. It. What did your? I call it surgery because when that part of those 3 days were your surgery. What
Yeah.
did post surgery look like for you?
Funny enough, I was on a high because I felt so liberated. And I thought I was invincible, and I made some very stupid decisions. Like, as I said, I went to work on the Monday and I resigned immediately without having another job. And I was a single mother of 2 kids. But I realized that those were all necessary things for me because when I came crashing down, I then had to introspect. And I thought that weekend would be a quick fix. And after day 3, my life would miraculously change, but that was actually only the beginning. And I couldn't use that group as a crutch, and I tried to for a long time, but I had to learn how to swim on my own, and I had to learn that my healing is an ongoing thing. It's actually a lifelong thing because
Lifelong.
there's so
Yeah.
many intricate layers of healing, and you think you're done with this one thing, but there's 15,000 layers of it that you've got to, so
Yeah.
it's been a process, and I think I've reached a stage now where I've accepted that there's never going to be a stage where I'm 100% healed, 100%, thriving, because we get triggered, especially in intimate relationships. We are always triggered every day, and knowing how to handle all of that, and giving myself grace for all of those things has been massive healing and learning opportunities for me.
What's something that you do for yourself when you are emotionally triggered? I ask this
So
because somebody might be listening and probably thinking, okay, how do I
yeah.
how do I get to, just try and be a little bit calmer? There's
Yeah.
some technique or something that you use.
I actually learned fairly recently that it's okay to feel the feelings. So if I'm feeling frustrated or if I'm having a down day, I allow myself to process it and not try to be hyper positive or try to talk away those feelings, because it's actually necessary. Because
Yeah.
what I've done in the past is try to suffocate that. And then, as I said, it manifests in other ways. So I allow it, the anger or the frustration or whatever it is, to move through my body, but I give myself a day. If it goes
Okay.
on to 2 3 days, then I will reach out for help, but fortunately it's never been like that. And I think it is massively important when you're on a healing journey to have a spiritual practice, and my spirituality was cultivated through this process, and it's not religion. So if religion works for you and if that's your foundational thing, absolutely. So for me, I've got personal tools that change my state. And that for me, firstly, is listening to music. Music is the immediate thing that gets me out of my state. And I've got a playlist that's dedicated to uplift my mood. And then I listen to books. I read books. I listen to podcasts. I do things to elevate my spirit. I have a conversation with my daughter. My daughter's always been my sounding board, or my
Yeah.
mother. And, that immediately changes me out of my state. And I think I've learned that I need to cultivate these spiritual practices every day to keep me on that upward trajectory, because it's very easy with all the stuff that happens in life to go down. So I think the short answer is definitely having a spiritual practice, whatever it may be. I've tried meditation, it doesn't work for me. My brain is overactive. But music is a thing that actually gives me a transcendental experience. So
Yeah.
we'll stick with that.
I think meditation is a broad word. I think your meditation can be anything. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be silence.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
It can be stillness. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I think we always have this notion of what meditation is. It's about quieting the mind. Actually, like myself, my mind is never quiet. It's always pumping.
A
So
thousand
I
taps.
give myself that. Yeah, I give myself that opportunity to let it be.
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't force it anymore. I always try to be a perfectionist in everything I do, but sometimes it's being imperfect that's the perfect part.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
you
I
know,
love that.
so now it's all about just the there was I had a guest on my show, and she mentioned the 17-second rule when you're feeling something.
Yeah.
So allow it to manifest for 17 seconds,
Yeah.
not feel that emotion, whatever it is, and then change your
Release it.
narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Before it
But you,
was, what is it? The 60 or 90 second. But it's changing all the time. It's
it
changing
is.
all the time.
Yeah, but it says it's scientists say that it takes 17 seconds for that energy to be embodied in you.
Yeah.
So you can be pissed off and angry or whatever, but your energy changes when it's in your body for over 17 seconds. But that's not how humans are hardwired. Humans are hardwired to milk it. If something happened to me this morning, I'm still talking about it next week already. I can milk that feeling for like a full week until I have to call myself out and say, this is what you're doing. You created a whole story and narrative about this one event. It's not a big event, and
Yeah.
let it go. So I'm like talking to myself throughout the day, calling myself out on my own bullshit. But it's a very difficult exercise to pull yourself out of it because a lot of times you feel like you're justified in certain things, justified feeling the anger, the rage, the frustration, the stress, whatever. And we want to hold on to that because we are so, I think our bodies are even addicted to drama, all of us
Oh
as
yeah.
humans. And it feels like a natural, normal thing where peace is, it just doesn't feel right, especially if you've had a very difficult, where your nervous system's always been dysregulated.
Sure.
So when
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
peaceful time, you think, what is going on? You need to
Yeah. This
create
is not
some.
normal.
Yeah, exactly. It feels abnormal.
I think it goes back to the important point you made about indoctrination in our cultures,
Yeah,
how we grow up.
yeah,
You think of all the drama our grannies and moms and all of them
yeah,
held on to for so long, and we learned that, right?
yeah,
As kids, you are visual. You absorb whatever is in front of you, and you
correct.
think that's normal, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
absolute.
going and you take that along with you in your adult life. If you're not mindfully aware that's not right, or that's chaotic, you're not going to be able
Yeah,
to progress. And you made an
correct.
important point there about how it's so important. The fundamental years of our upbringing shapes us, or our thinking going forward.
Absolutely. That's what it says. The first 7 years of a child's life creates the narrative for their whole life. And that is why someone like me that's 44 years old is still processing stuff from the time I was 8, 9, 10. And you think that that doesn't have an effect on you, but it actually has an effect on you at a visceral level. So you got to actually change your entire cellular breakdown and you've
Mole-
got to
Yeah,
like recalibrate. And it's a very, very difficult thing because we also come from a culture of complainers. If you've noticed in the Indian community, and I reference the Indian community because it's so true, like if you think about the people that were together, you were stuck in that poverty mindset or you were stuck in that negativity because people liked to like feed off each other in that way. Nobody spoke about, okay, let's talk about the positive things or that there's hope,
yeah,
or it's always been what's going wrong in your life, what is wrong with your health, what do you have to complain about, and that created camaraderie, which is mad. Actually, it's
yeah.
actually
I
ridiculous.
always say our our grandparents or whoever it was, if they go to the hospital, it's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm going to the hospital now. Look at me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
I
like
mean,
for
even
me, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was saying that it's almost a process of unbecoming. It's unbecoming everything you were taught, everything you were, we were ingrained with all of these different ideas. And, this process of healing and transformation has been a process of unbecoming everything I was taught that I had to be, everything that we were told is the template for an Indian girl. And, trying to pave my own way and create my own blueprint has been really difficult. I still find that I revert to some antiquated ways of thinking, and I have to
Yeah.
very quickly like pull myself out of that because it's like hardwired in us
Mhm.
almost.
A friend of mine always mentioned to me when we moved to Canada, this will stick with me, I think, till the end. He's like, whoever is setting up roots it'll always be very difficult.
Yeah,
The next generation will see the fruits of your labor. But
yeah,
right now, not saying you're not going to enjoy your labor, but
yeah,
it's the next generation or that somebody who comes after you is going to say, hey, you know what? The hard work, the foundations have been laid. Now it's just for us to go in, you know, take
run
on
with
that mantle
yeah,
and run with it because the blueprint is there already.
correct. Yeah,
It's easier for them to move on. Hence why myself and yourself now, the rooted foundations are being laid. So it's the
yeah,
next generation that we're trying to give the best opportunity to actually work through life because they're going to go through their own issues in life, whatever
yeah,
it may be.
yeah,
But they're going to have the tools, they're going to have knowledge that will help them earlier on
yeah.
instead of later on, like how we are now dealing with it.
Yeah, the it's so amazing, and I think this is one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I've broken that cycle and
Yeah,
I've
good.
raised my children differently. And when I look at my daughter's almost 24, she can articulate her feelings. She can give me feedback if I'm messing up as a mother. She can identify her own triggers. She can identify when her mental health is struggling. And in the same way, my son, who's 14, is a very different model of masculinity. He's very
Mm,
sensitive. He's very emotive. He can express his love. He's extremely affectionate. And, in this house, we have permission to, say how we feel. And, I've done it completely different. And I'm so thankful because it took me going through what I did to be able to break down that cycle. So, I can physically see now with the two of them
yeah,
how different they are already from how I was as a child, or how my brother was, and how we were raised and how my parents were raised. And that's completely different. And I absolutely love that. I think that's been the greatest moment of pride for me is to see them being different and my daughter, who basically grew up with me, being able to articulate all of the things that I didn't even have language for at her age.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, props to you for doing that. So now
Thank
just
you.
giving them the basis to have a much more healthier
Yeah.
relationship life going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's been amazing is that I haven't tried to be a martyr with my children. And I was very
Mm,
open and honest, not so much with my boy because he's still young, but with my daughter, I was very open. She's read my book. We've had honest conversations about my mental health, about how I've overcome, and she's seen that process of me being who I was before. And I was a very bad mother. I was not a present mother. I was very stuck in my own pain. So I couldn't fully show up for either of them. And when I started my healing journey, my parenting style and all of that completely changed. And I think, what's been amazing is that she's witnessed this transformation. She's not heard it,
yes,
but she's seen the
she's seen
effects
it.
of it. Yeah. And she's also seen, what I've become, what I've achieved, how hard I've worked to, become this version of me. So it's been really, really beautiful, having that happen with her as a witness as well, which has been really great.
Yeah, you've just given all the tools she needs to succeed.
Yeah. But I mean, life is still hard, right? But I think if we learn a level of self awareness and if we can call ourselves out with our own triggers and identify them, for me, that is like the most important thing. It's like a pivotal thing to know in terms of self awareness and self growth, because being able to identify that and articulate it means that, you don't use your childhood as an excuse, or you are able
Yeah.
to, change. You can't change what you don't see, basically.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.
Yeah. I mean, we can look back and understand why,
Yeah.
and now going forward, do something about it. Like you said, if you continuously resonate in that mode, you're not going to move anywhere.
Yeah.
You're just going to keep on blaming everybody else around you. There's no accountability on yourself, because that's where it all stems from. You have the opportunity, you have the choice to change. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned. That's what I realized. Nobody's going to make the change. I can go to every therapist under the sun. I can do all the healing. But if I don't do the work after the healing, what's the point? If I don't continuously do it every single day, what's the point?
Yeah. But I
And
found what I found fascinating, especially in my struggles with dating post divorce, is that everyone has the invitation to change or to transform, but not everyone accepts that invitation.
Yeah.
And I realized that we're all on our own journeys. And I've met people that are in their 50s and 60s that are all about evolution, that are willing to look at themselves. And I've met people in their 50s and 60s who are stuck with that victim mentality and absolutely refuse to change. I've known people that are the exact same person and version of themselves that they were 20 years ago. People that I left in Pietermaritzburg. I'm in Johannesburg now for 17 years. If I go back, I see the exact same people, same mentality, same way of operating, with no evolution and growth whatsoever. And a lot of people are actually okay with that, because ignorance is bliss. You don't have to do the hard work. And for me, I have struggled with this because, especially in relationships, it's been so difficult for me to not swoop in and try and save someone. And I've done that in the last few years. I've done that so many times, until 6 years ago, when I had one of the most traumatic relationships. And I had to then pause and realize I'm not here to save anyone, and no one's here to save me. And that was a huge aha moment, because I always had this romanticized idea that somebody will swoop in and save the damsel. And then I had to save myself, and I did it. And I realized that we are all responsible for our own mental health, and we can't force or love someone into change, or fight someone into changing, or even blackmail or manipulate, or whatever it is, beg even. I've done that. I've done the begging thing for someone to change. And if they don't want to, that's also fine.
Yeah. It's like looking into a mirror right now. Sorry. But exactly, it's the same thing we've been going through, both myself and my wife.
Yeah.
We're very helpful people in terms of trying to get you to the best possible outcome of that situation.
Yeah.
But in turn, sometimes it's 180, and we become the problem.
Yeah.
And we've started to realize, you know what, enough is enough. We can't do it anymore.
Yeah. But I think that's also,
If it's identifiable, I think it's if you identify somebody who's willing to accept that help, sure, no problem. I always say, if somebody's done me wrong, cool. But if you genuinely need help, I will have no second thought about helping you. There won't be anything, because if it's a genuine outcry for help, I will come and help you. But even if you've done me wrong, because that's just the people who, like, the kind of person I am. But I'm not going to sacrifice my own mental health or my own space if you're just there for, to take advantage of it.
But I've been doing this for so many years, and for me, it's a multifaceted thing. It's working with domestic violence victims, and it's also working with people that are struggling with mental health. And I realized that a lot of people want a quick fix, or they want, they want support, in the sense that they want, there's a little bit of entitlement. And the expectation, but very few people are willing to do the hard work, because it's not fun. And I haven't lied about that process. I have said this healing journey is an arduous journey. Facing yourself is, I think, one of the hardest things you ever do in your lifetime as a human, is facing
Yes.
yourself and facing your own fears, facing your own truth, telling your truth to yourself, let alone the world. And it's so much easier to anesthetize. And I think we come from a society that's big on anesthetizing, right? That is
Yeah,
why
yeah.
we have so
Numbing pain.
yeah, drug addicts and alcoholics, and now social media is a numbing agent, food is a numbing agent. And I think that I've realized because I'm deeply compassionate and I'm very empathetic, but I have had to learn the very hard way that I also have to say no to people, because if you are not willing to do the work, I'm not going to do the work for you, and I can't do the work for you. And
Yeah.
there's unfortunately no quick fix. And, making a commitment to yourself means that you're willing to, do the hard work that's necessary to change your life, because it's not going to happen miraculously. And anybody
Yeah.
that tries to tell you you can miraculously change your life is selling you some bullshit.
Yeah. Speaking of gender-based violence, as an advocate and a survivor, what's the one thing that we as a society really need to urgently address?
I've been saying this for such a long time, that we are such a reactive nation, especially in South Africa. We don't proactively address gender based violence, and we are so fixated on focusing on the symptom and not the cause. And for me, the cause is always deep rooted pathology, and people don't want to have that conversation. What's been interesting is I am a rape and GBV survivor, but I advocate for men because I
Okay.
understand the pathology behind why people do what they do. People are not inherently evil. You become that way, right? And what happens is that cycles of dysfunction gets perpetuated. And because men are given this narrative about masculinity that you've got to fit into, and not given permission to be vulnerable, especially in the Indian and Black culture, where men are, emasculated if they want to be express that whole spectrum of emotion. And so anger or power struggles are the only acceptable kind of feelings that can be
Yeah.
displayed. And so I find that the strongest message is that we need to be doing deeper work. We need to be looking at the causes, because what's going to be happening and what we see unfolding is that when we look at retributive things, it's not working. Our rates of GBV in South
Yeah.
Africa are escalating. And on the contrast, our rates of suicide in men are also increasing. And that's because we, again, are still looking at all of these superficial things, and we need to be digging much deeper. And when we do, when we start healing our boys, we inadvertently save our girls. And I think
Yeah.
that's the key thing.
I want to read you something I saw from a psychologist. These are not my own words. This is just something that I saw. So it says, it doesn't always start with hate. Often it starts with unregulated pain. It doesn't just stem from misogyny, it also grows from emotional neglect, from intergenerational wounds, from the ability to process hurt without hurting others. I
Yeah.
thought that was very interesting when I saw that.
That's exactly what I just basically said. That was summarized
Yeah.
so neatly. It's what happened to you. It's just basically that. What happened to you and how did you become this way? Because everybody has a reason for that. And it's a whole spectrum of things, from neglect, from childhood wounds, from not being loved correctly, from watching your father do that to your mother. It's a whole spectrum of things that weren't addressed and left to fester, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it in my grandparents' home as well, and which then translated, or my mom and uncle had to bear the burden of that,
Yeah.
those kind of actions, and they still carry
Yeah.
what I think they still carry those wounds with them till today.
Yeah.
They've probably never dealt with that, and my uncle has gone through his own journey in his own life and relationships, failure and success and whatever it was. But I think they both still carry on those deep wounds within themselves, and they never actually spoke about it a lot or processed it, what it meant for them. It wasn't actually
Yeah.
them who were the problem. It was an internal reflection of my grandparents and
Yeah.
their problems.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think they still feel responsible for it as well sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's where we need to also allow them a little bit of grace, because it's also not their fault. Like our
Yeah.
parents, they've seen what their parents did. We just
Correct.
it's just the way it is. But we do have the opportunity now to change.
I think I don't know how old you are. I'm just going to say our generation, but I
I'm
think for
40.
our generation, okay, so it's
Same
about
generation.
yeah.
Yeah.
We've been given a lot of gifts in the form of resources, in the form of people raising their hand, saying this is what's happened to me, and giving other people permission to do the same. So for like our parents, it was very taboo to have those conversations, to talk about mental health stuff, to talk about depression, to talk about fears or whatever. My father was exactly like that. He would never. He was the most hard, I want to say, but it was strange because he was very loving with my mother, but he was very aloof with us as children, with my brother and I. And he was a product, an exact replica of his father. And they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the awareness, they didn't have the permission. I think men would have rather died than go to another man and say they're in pain.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's still relevant in this day. But I think, in our generation, a lot more men are talking about it. A lot more men are coming forward, talking about their mental health struggles, or, breaking down those barriers to communication and empathy. And hopefully for my children's generation, it just gets better and better. And we start, doing a lot more in this space.
My dad has a core group of friends which they grew up with. And I always look back in awe of that, because they were like very odd. They were very so close that they would they would meet like once a month, just to, which I think is lacking nowadays. We don't have those kind of relationships anymore. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that my dad had that, because
Yeah.
it just allowed him to go and spend time away from the family and be with his friends, because that mentally, it's such a stimulus, because men will generally open up about anything. They'll talk about anything if they're comfortable,
Yeah.
hence why in this day and age we are very connected, but yet we are still alone.
Yeah.
We don't have, if I was looking back at my relationships and my friendships over the years, they were just transitional. I can't say I have two friends that I can probably call upon now,
Me too.
that will check in, they will check in on me as well, not just myself going the other way. So
That's
just to have one is such
Yeah.
a great thing to have now.
Yeah. But I'll be honest with you, is that for me it's also purposeful. I literally have maybe two or three people that I can pick up the phone. But I don't connect with anybody. I think a little bit on purpose, because I am so mindful of protecting my energy. And I only want to be around people that are like minded, or that speak life into me, or that elevate my spirit, because I've realized that it's very easy for me, that has struggled with depression for years, to go downhill if I've got people that sap my energy. And we're all vibrating at different levels, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody is low vibrational, I find, and I've had to consciously sever those friendships and relationships, even with family members that are vibrating at that level, because I realized not everyone has my best interests at heart. And if you're not speaking life into me, or we don't have a mutually respectful, loving relationship where we can hold each other accountable, I don't want to have those kind of superficial relationships. I'd rather be alone. And I am very much alone. I'm very much an introvert. And I keep it that way, because I don't feel like I need to have 15 people around me if we're not completely aligned, and if we're not in alignment with the way that we live our life, because that is extremely important to me as
Yeah.
well, because I feel like I've worked so hard to become this version of me, And we all know how easy it is to become social chameleons for people, and I just it just is destructive for me to
Yeah.
be around people that are not, in alignment with how I live my life. So that is why I
Yes.
can count on one hand number of friends. I have no friends. My daughter always laughs at me and says, "I'm your only friend." So, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
it's difficult. It's
Yeah,
difficult. I mean, emotionally cutting those ties, it's draining as well. It's emotional, it's
yeah.
challenging. I struggle with it very much so. It's hard. It's very, very hard. But
I
it's
It's a
required. It's a
necessity.
necessity.
Yeah, it's a necessity. And I think, because I know what it's taken for me to come out of that fire of purification, basically, and come haul myself out of that pit of darkness. I will refuse now. And I've become even more forceful in the last few years because I used to struggle with my relationships with men, where I had no boundaries and I still didn't have a sense of self worth. And that used to bring me down all the time. And then in my last relationship, 6.5 years ago, something switched so drastically in me that I am now very forceful with protecting that energy, and I will cut you off and I will think nothing of it and move on with my life. And that's how in a way, it's really hard. I've hardened, but I think it was a necessary thing for me because I needed to have that extreme boundary up with protecting my own peace.
Yeah. Speaking of fire, Girl on Fire,
Yes.
where did that where did that idea come from?
So this is such a beautiful story, and it is such a testament to how the universe orchestrates certain things. So I have always been fascinated with the phoenix. I've always regarded myself as a phoenix, from Greek mythology that dies and gets reborn again.
Rebirth.
Yeah. And so I've had that fascination and love for a phoenix. And then when I went on that workshop that I described earlier, after my failed suicide attempt. At the end of that workshop, what they do is they play a song, they dedicate a song to each participant, because how the workshop is structured is that on the Friday, you go and you release all the stuff. On the Saturday, you go through like a process of healing. And then on the Sunday, it's like this new version of you is emerged. And then they talk about how to take that forward, and not living from the pain. And the song they dedicated to me was called Girl on Fire. And I
Okay.
thought it was so unbelievable because, and they described me rising from the ashes when they gave me, an
They
honorary.
signed the song. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that was the name of my book. That's the name of my brand. If you can see, that's who I've effectively become. I've got a phoenix tattooed on my hand. So it was so serendipitous and such a beautiful, like full circle moment. And that's basically how the book came to be, how the title came to be, and how the brand came to be. It's basically resonating the phoenix rising from the ashes.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you the workshop. Is there any details that we can add into the description where people can go and probably look at it if they need it?
Yeah. So the workshop is still being run, but it is in person. It's not virtual, and it happens in Johannesburg for now. It's
Okay.
called Discover Your Optimal State by the SOAR Institute, SOAR Institute. And they have literally, I have been assisting, or I used to assist for years after I did my own workshop. And the lives and transformation that I have witnessed have been miraculous. It is miracle and magical, and I am alive because of them. So that, it's not even dramatic, because I've had cognitive therapy, and I'm not bashing therapy. I've had therapy on and off for years, and I've had, seen different counselors, and I've had different kinds of cognitive therapy, and it never shifted me in the way that this shifted me in 3 days. Because what happens is the change happens at a visceral level. So you
Okay.
can't unlearn the things that you learn. It's not something that you know with your mind, it's something that you feel. It's immersive learning. And
Okay.
that was really the catalyst for me. And from that workshop, I've had a lot of bad things happen after that, but I've never had suicide ideation again, and I've never been on an antidepressant again,
Okay,
which is
that's good.
miraculous. Yeah.
Yeah, you needed that anchor moment.
Yeah. And that was it.
So I guess if you're listening or if any viewers who need some form of resource, please check out the link below. I'll leave it in there. It could help you or could help somebody that you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why it's so. I love doing this because it also gives other people resources that they probably never knew about.
Yeah.
I'll share a story with you. A friend of mine, she was also really stuck in a relationship, and she it was very, she didn't know where she was. With the kids and husband and everything, it was a lot. And then I had an Ayurvedic person on my show as well, which they funny enough they were in school together.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and when she listened to the podcast, she was like, "No, I know this person.
Wow.
We were in the school together. We were in the same class."
Wow.
So, long story short, connected the two of them. She began her healing journey with the practitioner now, and yeah,
That's amazing. That is a universe in action. And I'm a firm believer. Like, even where messages that are meant to reach you at the exact time that it's meant to reach you will definitely come to you when you're ready to hear it. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah. Those are the kind of the wins I take from this
For sure.
from this platform.
Yeah.
It keeps your cup full.
Yeah. I was gonna say that it's very rewarding in the sense that you get to play a part as a conduit, to somebody else's epiphanies or to somebody else's realization. Or for me, when I get to share my story, I think the thing that's been the most profound is that I've had people always come to me to say that I've spoken them out of suicide. And that has been the biggest, I don't want to use the word benefit, but I can't think of another word. It's been the gift. It's been the gift that I've received in all of this. And I think it's effectively the same with you, is that you get to be this conduit and you'll never know
Yeah,
where your message lands or
resonates.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Lovely. Amazing.
I mean, we can all get caught in the evolution or the silo of the likes and the clicks and
Yeah.
the recognition and all of that. But
Yeah.
we need to stay true to ourselves and why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get adoration. We can always cling on to adoration as long as we want to.
Yeah.
We all just want to be, you did a good job. Well done. We all need that at times.
Yeah, we do.
It's important as well.
We do. I find that I feel a lot if somebody gives me a particular feedback, or when I've won an award, I've won 3 already. That definitely motivates me, but the feeling is very different than having someone say to me, "You saved my life," or "Your story changed me," or "Because of you, this is what happened," or "You've spoken me out of suicide," or "You've talked me out of suicide." Those are things that you can't quantify. Because as you say, like when you see content creators and when you see influencers or whatever, if people are, buying likes and buying, you can have 1,000 views or 1,000,000 views just because of a picture, but when you
Yeah.
actually affect somebody's life and when you actually affect real change, that for me is a very deep honor. And I don't take those things
Yeah.
for granted.
And it's all because you're speaking your truth. That's it.
Absolutely.
There's no
Absolutely.
magic. There's no magic potion or pearl. I think you're just speaking your truth. That's it.
Absolutely that. There's absolutely nothing else except for the fact that, yeah, you're speaking your truth.
Yeah.
It's profound.
I mean, you wear many hats. I mean, you're an international speaker as well. When you first were invited to speak, how did you feel?
I was petrified. I can't remember which was the first country. It's been so many years ago. But I think when I wrote my book, I did it to honor myself and my journey. And I never in a million years thought it would escalate into what it's become. So when it got published, there was, I think, the editor of the Post newspaper read it or saw somebody talk about it,
Yeah.
And he showcased me in the Post newspaper. And from the Post newspaper, somebody else saw it, and I was invited to ENCA News, which is live TV. And that I nearly had a heart attack for that. And I think my first talk, if I can remember, it must have been the Netherlands, but I can't be sure. I was absolutely petrified because I'm not the greatest speaker, and I don't profess to be. I'm very emotional and I cry every single time. And but that's because I'm not talking about something that's academic or cognitive. I'm talking about
Yeah,
something
yeah. It's a personal.
is deeply emotive and personal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I find that what happens is that I get into a process of flow, or I get into that spirit or whatever, and the words just come out even when I'm not thinking. And I think being that emotional or being that vulnerable without fear is the exact thing that resonates with audiences. And that's why I've spoken, I think, at 10 or 11 countries already,
Wow.
because it resonates so deeply with people. And it's not, I don't need to be the best speaker. I don't need to be somebody that articulates myself well. I'm somebody that is real. And I think people are hungry for truth in its substantive form.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm doing this for so many years, but ask me to speak now, and I'm exactly the same. I get petrified. It doesn't come naturally. I'm emotional all the time. And I've been telling the story for 1,000 years. But because it's so meaningful and I know the impact of, of telling it and how somebody will receive it, the impact is huge, and it will always be huge. It will always be a powerful story.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it gets any easier.
No, it does. No, it doesn't. Not for me. I've even thought I need to go for like training, coaching lessons of how to be a better speaker. But I find that, the reason I've been so-called successful, or the reason people still want to hear me or still follow me, is because this truth is raw, it's unfiltered, it's real, and it's not orchestrated. And I think that's important. I think that is what my brand is about. That is who I am. Who you see online and who you see in person is effectively exactly the same. There's no compartmentalization. And that is important to me. Being who I am, wherever I am, has been really important to me.
I mean, you look at news anchors nowadays, they're also not perfect. So why do we feel like we need to be perfect all the time? I mean, they use arms and, when they speak like this, and they use exclamations, and they use,
Yeah.
whatever it is, they speak the way we do.
Yeah.
It's just they're on a national platform. But
Yeah.
I get what you're coming. But you get better at. You won't be perfect.
Yeah.
You get better at just communicating certain ways. You like what I do is, after every podcast I watch it again while listening to it again, just to see how I came across. So the next time I can improve my delivery. So it's just about going, like watching, like in sports, you go back and watch your tapes to see
Yeah.
where you can improve.
Yeah.
And just small things. You don't have to make drastic changes. It's just small little things that you can tweak, and then your delivery comes out much better.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm quite open about the fact that I'm not the best orator in the world, and I don't want to be. What my intention is to always impact. And I think, that gets translated, however it gets translated, but it does come across because the message is so powerful, and I'm okay with that. When I look at myself from 7 years ago when I first started, I have gotten a lot better. I'm a lot more confident, I think, in sharing the story, and I've done a lot of growth as well. But the intentionality is always the same, and it's always, I hope somebody listens to this and takes away something profound, or it gives another woman permission to tell her truth and to set herself free, or whatever it may be. But that's always the intention, and I'm absolutely fine with that.
Yeah, your authentic intention is what matters. Is what comes across.
Yeah.
Hence why people, like you said, people resonate with you deeply more than
Yeah.
they would some influencer who's just on the face value of it.
Yeah. Because I find that it's fascinating because I get a lot of marketing companies reach out to me and say, we can grow your audience, pay us this amount of money, we can, do this and that to make you stand out more. But I don't want to be relevant. I don't feel like I want to be relevant. There's a lot of my posts that get a lot of traction that reach. I've had posts that reached over 1 million views organically. And, for me, it's always about if one person reads it and takes away something from what I say, or it helps somebody, or it sparks some thinking for somebody to change the way they operate, that for me is a win. I do get excited. I'll be posting
course.
about how many people read my stuff or whatever organically. But, you know, when it comes down to it, if I impact one life, that for me is a meaningful thing.
Yeah. I think all of us are on that journey of just somebody taking something away from our journeys to help them.
Correct. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back now, what would you tell young Tavanya who hasn't found her fire yet?
I would tell her that she is enough, because my narrative for the longest time was I am not good enough. And I would remind her that that spark has always been there, and it just needed to burst into flames or for somebody to ignite it. But I think the most powerful thing I could go back and say to small Tavanya is, you are enough, and you will become the woman of your dreams, even the dreams that you never thought were possible for you. Because those are things that I remember as a young girl, from as young as like 8, 9, that feeling of being completely invisible, of not fitting in, of not being good enough. And then I had all these things happen in succession, from the rape to being a mother at the age of 20, to getting a divorce after 3 months, then losing my father to cancer. It was all of these things that happened in succession and in quick succession. And so I thought there was absolutely no hope. There was like no way that I could redeem myself or become anything. I was just relegated to failure category. And I had all of these reasons to feel not good enough, because it was such an inherent belief that the universe kept affirming that because I believed it so fully. And so I can't lie to you and say I absolutely believe I am enough, or that my self-love is so, profound. It's still a work in progress, because it's, many, many years, decades of undoing all of the stuff. And, but I think telling young Tivania that she's enough, whether she believes it or not, is another thing. But you are enough would be the most profound thing.
Yeah, I think she'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
For sure. And in terms of what's next for Tavanya, anything exciting we can look forward to? And if the viewers or listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I am available on all social platforms except TikTok. But you can just do a search. My name is quite unique.
Yeah, I will add those descriptions in the
Yes, please. You're more than welcome to put all my
links
social
below.
media handles. Yeah, my email address, my website. What's next? I feel like there could possibly be another book in the making. I've been thinking about it. I haven't committed to it. I don't know. I've been very passionate about increasing the work that I'm doing in the women empowerment space. And I've now recently in April been made the brand ambassador for an organization called Her Impact Alliance. And the work that we're doing there is to empower and elevate the lives of women. And so I get to merge a lot of my dreams with the backing support and even financial support from the company, which has been absolutely phenomenal for me as a person. And ultimately, that's been my focus now, to do more things to impact and in a very tangible way. So I've got a workshop coming up in August that's taking unemployed women and giving them a skill, teaching them a skill for free, how to make money from home and how to turn that into a lucrative business. And I'm quite excited about that. That's backed by the support of Her Impact Alliance. And I've got autonomy to do those things like a few times a year because of that company supporting my initiatives and my dream. And I definitely want to make a tangible difference in the lives of women who feel like me, who feel lost, who feel unseen, who feel invisible. I've also been toying with the idea of starting my own foundation, but I currently have 6 jobs and I'm a single mom. So
Yeah.
where to find the time to juggle all of those things? But I'm putting it out into the universe. It's been out into the universe. So if it's meant
Nice.
for me, it's going to manifest. And, ultimately, my biggest dream has been to create a halfway house for domestic violence survivors that are stuck in that environment because they've got nowhere else to go. I remember when I was running away from my abuser, I was forced to go to my ex-husband, and I'm very grateful for him for not telling me to F off. But he opened his door to me when I was escaping that very violent relationship. And I realized that a lot of women stay because they are financially dependent and have nowhere else to go. And so my dream is definitely to open a halfway house for battered women to recover, restore, and then heal and go back out into the world more powerful.
Yeah. Let's
Manifest.
get Tavanya's dreams. Yeah, let's get Tavanya's dreams off the ground, guys. Let's help out. Yeah, I'm a true believer of manifesting it now. Just put it out there. You never know when it will happen.
Yeah. I'm the proof of manifestation. I actually used to dream about touching my own book, smelling my book, seeing my name in print, and all of those things came to life.
Yeah, it works, guys. It works.
It works. I'm the proof.
For sure. No, Tavanya's story is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's a path to light, and that healing doesn't change you. It empowers you to change others. Her voice is proof that pain can be transformed into purpose. If her journey moved you, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it, and remember, real strength is found in the courage of the truth that you speak. So thank you, Stefania. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Truly inspirational. And I am emotionally, just thankful that you've shared your journey with us today, and I hope it resonates with somebody, and that they can then pay it forward to somebody else. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
If there's anything else you'd like to, leave us with.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate being given another platform. I think the most important thing is what we've touched on throughout this conversation is that living in truth will set you free. Yeah. And I hope that if there's the one message that someone takes away from this conversation, is that your truth will definitely set you free. It will liberate you. It will free you. And it will also give other people permission to do the same. So, yes. Famous last words.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tavanya.
Thank you.
Yes, guys, remember, you're welcome. Yes, guys, remember to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share this with anybody else that really needs it. It will just help the channel grow as well, and I can continue to bring you more amazing guests like Tavanya. So, guys, make sure to catch the next one, and until then, stay Zen. Thank you so much.